Jason Garrett, Football Night in America, and their coverage of the divisional playoffs begins Saturday at 3 Eastern. Football Night in America from Kansas City as the Chiefs host Jacksonville. Good to talk to you again, Jason. Which opening do you think is the best right now?
Ooh, great question. I think it depends on the coach.
Let's say Sean Payton.
Yeah, I think the things that Sean will value are things that a lot of people will value, and I think maybe he has some more options than most. I think more than anything else, he wants a structure and an organization where he has clout and he has a decision-making power that makes everything kind of stop with him. And so I think that's probably line one for him. Resources in the organization to make decisions, to go get players, and having a big budget. I think that's a big thing. And I think the other part of it is the quarterback situation. Sean was very fortunate in New Orleans to have a Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees, and they were a tremendous collaboration. But I think he recognized that it was harder his last year when Drew Brees wasn't there. So having a plan at quarterback, whether the guy's in place or whether there's no one's in place, so he can go get a guy to be his next Drew Brees. I think those are probably the biggest factors for him.
Okay. Taking all of that into consideration, which team fits that criteria?
Two ways to go. Sean has to decide what his feelings are about Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. Does he see those guys as people he wants to work with? Obviously, both have been very accomplished players. Russell Wilson is a 9-time Pro Bowler. And obviously it wasn't his best year in Denver this past year, but he's had a ton of success. He could potentially be a Hall of Fame quarterback. So does Sean see him as someone he can kind of get right and get playing to the level that he played at before? Certainly the people in Denver have an immense amount of resources, the Walmart family and all of that. Denver's a great place to live. There's a great history and tradition in that organization. So, George Payton, who's the general manager there, fantastic person. So, that could be attractive to him. Again, what's his feeling on Kyler Murray? There's a commitment in Arizona to Kyler Murray for a long time. How does that work out? I got to believe that, he would have a lot of say in what goes on there going forward. But then Carolina, there's a lot of money there in Carolina. There is no established quarterback. Maybe that's a better way to go, where you don't have a guy and you can kind of clean the slate. So, we can argue him 100 different ways. I think as much as anything else, when he's traveling the country, visiting with people, it's going to be a gut instinct and a gut feel for what he thinks is the best environment.
Take us through the interviewing process when you got the Cowboys job. So when you get off the plane, then what happens? Take us through the steps of how many interviews, how many people. Are you selling yourself to Jerry Jones? My philosophy of the franchise. This is what I see. This is the crystal ball.
Do you want the real story, Dan?
Yeah.
It's a really good story. It's a long story. I was coaching with the Miami Dolphins at the time. I just finished playing, and then Nick Saban became the head coach there. And so I was a quarterback with the Dolphins my last year for the last part of the season. And a couple of weeks later, I became their quarterback coach. And I did that for a couple of years. Then Coach Saban went to Alabama, and Cam Cameron was hired as the Dolphins head coach. And I wasn't going to be there, but I was still with them, but I was under contract. So I was going to kind of see what the potential options were, maybe in college football. And just kind of play it out a little bit. So I go to the Senior Bowl wearing my Miami Dolphins gear, and Coach Parcells retires from the Cowboys on Monday of that week. So I'm at the Senior Bowl on Tuesday, and I'm at practice, and I get a phone call, and it's some people from the Dolphins saying that the Cowboys want to visit with me about this job. And Wayne Huizenga was the owner of the Dolphins at the time, and he and Jerry Jones obviously have a relationship, and they talked. And Jerry had explained to him that I had been a player for the Cowboys for 8 years, and that had been a big part of my life before. And he'd love to have a visit with me, even though I was under contract. And so the deal was, you have until 12 noon on Thursday. You have this window to talk and figure something out. So I kind of get all my stuff together, and I leave early Wednesday morning to go from Mobile, Alabama to Dallas. And it was kind of a surreal experience. I think the flight was literally at 6 a.m. And I get to the airport early, and there had been a WWE event in Mobile the night before. So I'm on this little plane from Mobile to Dallas with all these professional wrestlers. And so I'm in line with these guys. I'm like, who are you guys? Oh, yeah, we had this big event the night before. And, there were like 10 of them, men and women. And it was like the crazy, it was dark and misty out. I'm like, where am I right now? What am I doing? And so anyway, I got my Dolphins gear on, and I'm heading to Dallas. And I get there early. I get there like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I go over to Valley Ranch, the old facility. And I just spent the day with Jerry and Steven, and we just talked all about kind of what the idea would be. Now, you got to remember that the Cowboys didn't have a head coach, so it was, I'm 2 years into coaching. So, what is this for? Is this for the head coach? Is this for a coordinator position? Why are we talking? So we kind of explained all of that, and what my philosophy would be, and how I would build a program, and everything. And so it went on all day long. And I've known Jerry for years and Steven for years, but we just spent a lot of time together that day. And it ended up at like 2 o'clock in the morning at this place, Al Bernays in Dallas, which is kind of this famous steak place, in the back, just listening to Steven and Jerry and us having a great conversation. And when you play it back, I'd probably gotten up at 3 o'clock in the morning in Mobile, and now it's about 2 o'clock. So I've been up for about 23 straight hours talking philosophy. And
were you offered the job at the steakhouse?
What's that?
Were you offered the job at the steakhouse?
No. Steven told me later the stamina that I had that day was really impressive to Jerry.
When did they offer you the job?
I can't remember. We talked about it the next day, and eventually we said, "Hey, don't leave. We're going to figure something out here."
Wow.
And so before 12 noon on Thursday, which was the deadline, we decided that I was going to stay in Dallas in some capacity.
Did you ever think that maybe it was too much for you too soon after your playing career, with not having a long coaching history?
Well, it certainly happened fast. There's no question about that. But I had been in football for a long time, and I was fortunate to be around really good people. And eventually I was named the offensive coordinator, and you rely on your experiences with Norv Turner and Ernie Zampese and Sean Payton and John Gruden and a lot of those guys that I was fortunate to be around. And, you dive in, when you got your first job at ESPN, you probably weren't ready. You dive in, you figure it out, you make your mistakes, you keep going, and that's what we did.
We're talking to Jason Garrett, Football Night in America. Would you rather have a cocky quarterback or a confident quarterback?
I think in order to be great, you have to be on the edge of cockiness. I think cocky matters, as long as cocky doesn't mean that you're not willing to go through the steps to prepare the right way. I think that's an important thing.
Like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow toes the line.
Yeah, love him. He's got swagger. That's his personality. That's who he is. He clearly works at it. He clearly cares about it. He clearly respects the process and who he's going against. But he's got a little edge to him, and he's got some fantastic outfits. He likes to express himself that way. but he when he gets in that huddle, he's in charge, and I think that's what's most important.
We talked to Tony Dungy yesterday, and he said after the third miss by the Cowboys kicker, he would have benched him and then just gone for two after that. What do you think of that philosophy? What would you have done in that situation?
Well, I think it was probably easier for them to stick with him because the game was out of hand. my instinct, and probably I'm biased towards Brett Maher because he was a really good kicker for us. I probably would have stuck with him and kept giving him chances, knowing that he had to kick his way out of it. But Tony makes a great point. If that game is close and it's 24-24, what do you do there?
Yes.
And those become harder decisions.
You ever yelled at a kicker?
I don't think I ever yelled at a kicker.
We don't yell at kickers, do we? We put our arms around kickers, don't we? We treat them differently than we do anybody else, right? Yeah,
it's interesting that there's a fragility to kickers that kind of comes with the position. So you treat them with kid gloves.
Have you seen enough of Trevor Lawrence? Does he enter into that picture with Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow or these younger quarterbacks? Is he there yet?
I don't think he's there yet,
Okay.
but boy, he's on his way. And talk about a great marriage between him and Doug Peterson and that offensive staff. You see marked improvement in him over the course of the year. And as much as anything else, a couple things you're always trying to teach your quarterbacks is quick and decisive. Go back, make your decisions, get the ball out of your hand. I think that's such an important trait for guys. And it goes back to a little bit what we're talking about, confidence and cockiness and preparation. All of that gets manifested in those qualities. He's quick, he's decisive, he's getting it out of his hand, and he really looks like a different quarterback the last half of this year. How's TV treating you? It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. The people at NBC are first class. And, what's been fun about it for me, Dan, is I go in knowing that I don't know how to do this. And you try to have a humility about that, but you're also going to dive in and try to get it done. And they've been so good in being supportive and positive with me, but also very instructive, which I've appreciated. I actually said that to them. I said, the only thing I'm going to be mad at you is if you don't tell me. Yeah. I'm coachable. Just tell me. If it's not good, just tell me, and I'll try to figure it out and make it better the next time. And everybody at NBC has been great in that regard. How close did you come to taking the Stanford job? It's an intriguing place. It really is. I've always had great admiration for it, and that's why I went out there and visited with them. You get a chance to talk to Andrew Luck and Condoleezza Rice and Bruce Dunleavy and Bernard Muir. Bernard Muir is the AD at Stanford, and Bruce Dunleavy is a distinguished alum. And you're talking about being the head coach out there. It was a really fun experience, stimulating experience. But, at the end of it, the college landscape is changing. And, you embrace the standards at a place like Stanford. You want to coach those kinds of kids who are so driven. But with transfer portal and NIL and a lot of other factors, it might be hard to win in an environment like that. So I was thankful for the opportunity, but I'm glad I did what I did. Yeah, who would have thought that the NFL would be simpler than college football? But it's the case. Isn't it crazy? Yeah, and only getting crazier here until they understand what NIL is. I'm really hoping they somehow put some curbs on these things, and I don't know how they do it. I think it's good. NIL is a good thing in concept, but hopefully it gets used the right way to benefit the kids and not to, too much recruiting of high school kids and transfers is a bad thing using NIL. So hopefully they can get that all sorted out. Thanks for sharing the story there with the Cowboys job, and have fun in Kansas City. Great to talk to you again, Jace. I always love talking to you, Dan. That's Jason Garrett, Football Night in America. It'll be football afternoon in America. They got Kansas City and the Jags. That'll be starting, I think, at 3 Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We'll take a break. We've got our play of the day up next.